And this is crazy. We walking on the yard. It's a big ass circle. We walking from, they call chow time, eating lunch, right? I mean, eating dinner. And in prison, they don't really want y'all to gang up. What I mean by that is huddling up together, walking around. And if you see that happening, you automatically know that, all right, man, something's probably about to go down. And we started noticing that, hey, man, that group over there look kind of large, right? So the cats I'm with, we are, all right, here we go, y'all. Here we go. It's about to go down. We see this group over there, they're like 15 to 20 of them. And all of a sudden, we start seeing like the group they get tighter. And then we see heck arms just moving around. And then all of a sudden, you hear the alarm go off. And that whole crowd that was together kind of dispersed. Boom. And you see one cat like kind of just dropping, collapse to the ground. Man, he had hella holes all over him. They stabbed him up.
To have once been a criminal is no disgrace. To remain a criminal is the disgrace. I formerly was a criminal. I formerly was in prison. I'm not ashamed of that.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Listen, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the second season of I Used to Be a Criminal with your guy, Marlo Da Motivator. Season 1, we had a blast, but here we go for season 2. And listen, for season 2, we want to do something different, right? Everybody I came in contact with always say, hey, listen, Marlo, look, we love all the stories. We want to know more about you. So why don't you get interviewed? And so that's what we're going to give y'all. For the first episode of season 2, it's going to be an interview with me, right? And so listen, I can't interview myself, right? So I brought out a special host to interview me. I let her introduce herself like we do on this show, all right? Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Spooner. I'm the wife of Marlo Da Motivator. I am a motivational speaker. I'm an exhorter. I'm an evangelist. I am a life coach. And you can check me out at GodEventToLive.com, where I have a coaching program where I teach women on how to be confident, teach women how to break generational curses, especially the generational curse of what goes on in my house stays in my house. And so I'm happy to be here today interviewing Marlo Da Motivator, my husband, who is motivating people around the world with his inspirational stories from various walks of life. So Marlo Da Motivator, welcome to I Used to Be a Criminal. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you currently have going on.
Thanks for asking. So listen, I have a lot of things going on. First and foremost, I'm a motivator. I go into several different prisons and jails across California, inspiring and encouraging individuals to give up their antisocial pursuits. Outside of that, I'm a book writer. I'm an author. Got 3 books. As you can see right here, from the bottom to the top, there's a self-help motivational book geared for anybody, right? Primarily, it was written for those who are spending time in jail or in a prison. However, at the end of the day, anybody can be motivated by what's in the book. Also, I have 2 children's books, What You Meant for Evil, as well as Speak Despite the Fear. These books can be picked up at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, online at Target and Walmart. But if you want a signature from me, want me to sign it, you got to go to marlodamotivator.com/books. I get your book out to you ASAP. And I'm also putting a signature in there for you. Also, I have contracts where I speak to a lot of nonprofit organizations, CBOs around the community, encouraging people post-release after they get out of jail or prison. Sometimes people still find it difficult to navigate the streets in the system, as sometimes the system is set up a lot of times to send you right back. So it's my job to go in there and show them the way to stay out. I have my own show called I Used to Be a Criminal. Here, we're trying to enlighten folks. And all that sounds good, right? But at the end of the day, I have to tell you, I used to be a criminal.
Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good character. Marlo, what is your definition of redemption? Not the dictionary definition, but your own definition.
That's a good question. Redemption. For me, redemption could be played out in a lot of different ways, right? Be defined a lot of different ways. But for me, it's to do something over again, to get back to a state in which you were at prior to whatever happened and took place, right? For me, we look at the ultimate redemption is Christ, right? The sacrifice God did for us to redeem us back to himself, right? Then you can take it on a different level, right? Like, so people like myself who made mistakes in our lives, went down the wrong pathway, right? And that we find ourselves going to jail, sometimes prison, or sometimes just find yourself in a situation where you feel like I'm out of the norm, right? I'm out of the regular society as the way people see us, right? And so for me, redemption is saying like, hey, listen, it's not over. You have an opportunity to get back into this game again that's called life and do things the way that you probably should have been doing it the first time, or that you were doing it the first time until you made that mistake.
So for every episode, after the icebreaker, you start with a quote. Can you talk about where you get the quotes from and why you're using them?
Yes, I haven't really shared this much. I think last season I probably shared it with one guest, but yeah, the quotes that come from the Bible, directly from the Bible. I believe in God, and I know that that's not the case for everyone, right? And to each his own. However, it's words of the Bible that I use, right? Like you said in the beginning, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good character, right? Yeah. And for the average person, they may not know where that came from, but they say, hey, man, that's wise, man. I haven't thought about that. And likewise, I go grab a quote before every interview, and I pray to God to give me something that I can use that'll touch the masses that may see this interview, or even the interviewee. They can hear that quote and they be motivated. And so that's where I get it from, directly from the Bible. And I told God that, if he give me a platform to be able to speak to individuals, I'm always trying to enlighten people with his word in some kind of capacity. And this is one of the ways in which I am doing it.
So pretty much Marlo the Motivator, outside from talking about helping the other system impact to see the success story of those who were previously incarcerated, it also is a platform where you're reaching the masses with the word of God as well, whether they know it or not.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we plant the seed, right? Sometimes people, if you come at people directly and tell people, hey, this is what the Bible say, right, people look at you as maybe you're a preacher or, you're a con artist and things like that. I don't want to hear that. So, I've learned that you don't have to say that to people all the time, right? You can meet people where they are. I just give you a wise quote from God, the word of God, and then you take it and hit you and penetrate you however it penetrates you. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Let's begin by finding out, why did you create I Used to Be a Criminal? Like, what was the inspiration behind that, the foundation?
That's a good question. Well, a lot of times, you see people who made mistakes, go to jail, go to prison or whatever, get arrested, and they try to go get a job, right? And you try to go get a house, you try to get an apartment. And people in our society look at you as you're scum of the earth sometimes, right? And so they don't want to be bothered with you. They look at you as, no, I don't trust this person, and not trustworthy. And for me, I felt like, we have to break that stigma. We got to kill that stigma of saying that criminal always a criminal, right? And so for me, starting I Used to Be a Criminal, I felt like it's an opportunity so that people in society can see, hey, look, wait a minute, this person used to be that way, but look at this person now, right? Last year, we interviewed a person that was an attorney. Right, he went to jail. He sat in prison on a 1 and 2 yard, and then all of a sudden he came home, passed the state board twice, not once but twice. Went to college, got several degrees. Next thing you know, he's a practicing California attorney, right? Yeah, most definitely. So we interviewed others. You go back and watch season 1. And so my point is that I wanted to make sure that people in society who have an opportunity to be of a blessing to other people when they come home from jail, right? You might be a manager, a supervisor, an owner of a company, a landowner, or somewhere where people who been to jail before come to you and look for a handout, and they be honest with you and tell you, look, yeah, I made a mistake in my past. Can you give me an opportunity? I want people to see that. Yeah, give that person an opportunity. Be that person to open that door for somebody and allow them to be able to say, I used to be a criminal, but thanks to that person, now I'm not a criminal anymore. Right. This is what I'm doing. So that's why I created the show.
So we really want to leave that stigma of once a criminal, always a criminal in the past. We want to allow people to basically wipe their slate clean, that they're no longer defined by their past mistakes, even whether it's being a criminal, whether it's being a liar, a compulsive liar. Like, we want to give them a clean slate so they're no longer under that cloud, that dark cloud of being a criminal or a liar or whatever the case may be.
Right. Most definitely. And that's what it's about. And I think for the most part, as people watch the episodes, they see some of the struggles that people been through, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times it's not a person just had a great life. Sometimes it may happen, but people had a great life and they just say, yeah, I'm about to go out here and commit a crime. Sometimes you look at their backstory, you say, oh man, dang, I kind of can see why that person went down that pathway. And I see how they ended up where they are. But I'm glad they are better now. And since I know that, I'm gonna be able to help other people improve their lifestyle. And so, yeah, the show is all about, man, showing people, hey, listen, man, kill that stigma, man. Once a criminal is not always a criminal. I'm here to tell you today, I used to be a criminal.
Right. And that reminds me of when you were saying that, how pretty much a lot of times people don't look at the foundation, they just look at the fruit. They look at when the harvest comes in, but they don't look at why this harvest is the way it is, why this person is bearing these bad or whether good fruit. But there's a foundation that was planted beforehand that brought forth the fruit that this person is bearing. And we're judged by the fruit that we bear, but people don't go back and necessarily look at the foundation or the seed that was planted that caused this tree or this person to bear whatever type of fruit that they're bearing in their lives.
Yeah. No, that's well put. I mean, we're not looking, most people I speak to that been incarcerated or been through the struggle, they're not making excuses, especially those who are really trying to do the right thing and get their life together. They admit, hey, listen, man, I messed up. You know, at some point in my life, I made a conscious decision to go this way. But at the same time, if you look at a lot of these people's stories, man, a lot of people have rough life, man, just like myself. And we had to make some decisions. And them decisions turned out to be negative. And we find ourselves in jail. But at the end of the day, you know, these people have been able to bounce back. And I want you to understand that more people in society are bouncing back every day.
Right. And so what are your hopes for the show? And what are your hopes that people get from the show?
Well, I think some of my hopes, I know my hopes are that this show turns into be more than just a talk show, right? One of my visions is that this show goes from being a talk show and continue to be a talk show, but also it could be a TV show, right? Where we have people sit down and they kind of walk you through their life, a couple of episodes in their life where this thing is, you know, childhood, and then where they made some bad decisions at, incarceration, and now look at me. And you see these shows all the time on TV, right? But they talk about, I don't even want to give out people the show's names, but they show people go to jail or how people, what they're doing now and they're in prison, right? I want to show people that came back, right? They show that same walk, the mistakes they made, but I want to show them now what they're doing. And so I see this turning into like a TV show as well. And then also reaching the people all around the country, man. You know, hopefully I can get some famous people that's been through the same struggles like myself, and they can come on the show and they can talk and shed light on a larger platform as well. And so that's what we're trying to do. But right now, we just touching who we can touch and let God do the rest.
And what I heard from that, you're talking about it turning to the show and basically with people basically showing from childhood to prison to how they overcome. What kept ringing in my spirit was stages. You want to show the various stages in a person's life. And just because somebody went through one stage in their life does not mean that it defines the rest of the stages or the rest of their chapters or the rest of their book or whatnot.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to do it on a big screen where people, because sometimes when you talk to people or people read books, they get kind of like lost in wording. But sometimes people are visual. So they see it on a screen, they can see like, oh man, look at that person's childhood. Kind of remind me of mine. You know what I mean? Exactly. Stuff like that. And they can connect with it even more. You know, and I do want to show the stages because it's important to see how people go through life, up, down, whatever, then they get to this final product. You know, when you first watch this show, when you first tune in, you hear over like a voiceover talking. And that's Malcolm X, right? He said, to once be a criminal is no disgrace. To remain a criminal is a disgrace, right? He said, I once was a criminal, right? I once was in prison. He said, I'm not ashamed of that. And so I want people to understand that, man. Like, look, man, whoever you are, you're watching this show today, man, don't be ashamed. You made some mistakes, or maybe you didn't. Maybe somebody set you up. Maybe the criminal justice system just failed you all together. But I want you to understand, don't be ashamed of that. You have get back. It's not where you start that defines you. You're defined by what you make of it. Let's make something good of it.
Yeah, that's great. Let's pivot for a minute. Since we're on the topic of the foundation and the root, let's talk about your life growing up and how your household was.
Yeah, so I grew up in West Oakland, in what they call the lower bottom, right? And so I grew up there, and it wasn't the pleasant house that most people had, you know, that you talk about as success, you know, that's successful. At least in my opinion, I know of. Well, my mother was addicted to narcotics, right? She smoked crack, cocaine. She was addicted to cigarettes, as well as alcohol. One of her drinks of choice was Cisco. And my father was an abusive alcoholic. Some people say he was a functional alcoholic because he was able to also go to work daily, right? But after that, when he come home, he had some drinks, beer, and I see him turn violent on the drop of a dime, right? I once seen my father hit my mama over the head with a tire iron. Most people may not know what that is by the name, but a tire iron is the metal or steel bar that you use to change the lug nuts on a car tire. I've seen them hit her over the head with that. I've seen them fight a lot. I've seen, my mom, we was outside on the street corner, trying to do whatever he can to survive, right? I mean, from being homeless to eating at the Salvation Army to eating at St. Vincent de Paul over in West Oakland. And so my life was very challenging. I got into the drug game at around the age of 8. But before I take you there, I want to talk about my first step I ever participated in. Mm-hmm. That was around the same time, around 8, 7 years old. That happened with my mother, right? Wow. My mother, we were hungry. We went into a liquor store right there on 12th and Peralta. And I remember going in the store, and my mama selected to go to the back of the store and go in there and open up the little refrigerator and grab out some lunch meat. Mm-hmm. As we was traveling back through the aisle towards the front of the store, she decided to conceal it. And the guy at the front of the store, I could see his face from my angle. And at the back of the store, I'm not sure if y'all familiar with these kind of little liquor stores, but they had like a big old circular mirror where the person at the front can look over and kind of see what's going on at the back of the store. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I noticed it. My mama was high. She didn't even notice it. And so I stepped in behind her to shield her so she can stick this lunch meat down the back of her pants and we can leave out the store with something to eat. That was my first step I participated in, but it wasn't the last. And, at 8 years old, around 7, 8 years old, some other things I experienced sexual abuse, right? I experienced that from an older female family member. Whereas, I was young, that person was older than I am or was at the time. And she had me do sexual acts to her and she would perform sexual acts on me. And there's a lot of men out there. We don't talk about that. As a man, you feel like, oh, I'm a sucker or I'm soft if I talk about being taken advantage of sexually. I was, it wasn't a man who did it. It was a woman. But even if it was a man who messed with you, man, you need to go get, talk to somebody about it, get it off your chest. Because at times you hold these things in and you have this buildup of anger and resentment towards people, and you only know why, but you haven't reflected on the reason as to why you may be feeling a certain way that you are. Yeah. And for me, that abuse that I experienced, it had me feel a certain way towards women, right? It was more like we come to the sexual part of a relationship more to me was more just based on sexual relations, nothing else. There was no feelings. Mm-hmm. And I had to think about why I felt that way as a grown man. I said, oh, I get it. This is what happened to me. And it wasn't about loving and being compassionate. It was more about just a sexual thing. So, I experienced that at an early age for maybe a course of maybe I would say 2 to 3 years, right? Wow. Yeah, over the course of 2 or 3 years. And it wasn't every day, but it happened, periodically. Right. And so that's another thing I experienced. I moved forward to a point where in my life where, like I said, I started selling drugs, right? And the way I sold drugs, it wasn't hand in hand for myself as an 8-year-old. What I was doing was I was like the money holder, right? So I participated in the drug game from a different perspective, right?
Or like the bank.
Yeah, I'm like the bank teller, right? So what I would do is the older guys would have me stand across the street from them and they'd give me like a football or a basketball and I'd be playing with it on the corner and they would be on the other side of the street selling dope. And so what they would do is as the dope was moving in and they was making a lot of money because this was in the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. They would take their profits and instead of having it in their pocket, they would bring it across the street and put it in my pocket, right? So like each pocket belonged to a different drug dealer, right? And so I would have like maybe 4 or 5, 6 grand in one pocket, 5, 6, 7 over here, 2 or 3 in the back. And at any given moment, I probably could have had 15, 20 grand in my pocket, right? And they would go back across the street and continue to sell their drugs. Now, a lot of times people ask me, Marlo, why was this, what was happening here? I don't understand. Why would they do that? And I'll tell you why. Back in the 80s, really back in the 80s, you had it where police would pull up in Oakland. I'm sure it was happening in Los Angeles, a lot of our inner cities, and they would jump out on the people that they thought were drug dealers, or maybe they were drug dealers. They'd jump out, rough them up, take their money at times, and just leave. Don't even take them to jail, just take all their money. Yeah. And so the older guys wanted to make sure their money was secure with me, and they had me trained. When the police pull up, you see us, you just leave. You walk down the street with your ball, dribbling your ball or throwing your football up, and go down there and go wait. Once they leave, we'll come back and we'll come get our money from you. And so this was like a routine I did like several times a week. And somebody would ask me like, Marlo, what was your pay for that? And I would tell you, I didn't get paid anything. In fact, my mother was paid. They would give her drugs, right? Why for me to do these type of activities. And this is something that happened for quite some time. And I think what I did get out of this, if nothing else, was I came to become fond of money. Yeah. I started to love money. I started to see how they had respect. People come to them and beg them, can you please give me this? And people, they have girls that liked them. You had these nice fancy cars. Yeah. I've never seen these guys hungry. I mean, I see them eat like some food. They just throw it on the ground because they didn't want for food. And so I told myself as a kid, like, I gotta have that. I'm tired of going to Salvation Army and struggling to eat. And so I'm gonna get that money one day as well.
And so it's kind of like how we broadcast careers and things and that children can be on TV, and they look at that person and say, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or whatever else. But what was broadcast in front of you was drug dealing. And so therefore you saw this, 5 to 7 days a week. And so you said in your heart, I want to become like that. Most
definitely. That's well put. In fact, that's exactly what happened. And not only the drug dealing that I see, my daddy used to have guns. I go in his house because he didn't live with us, right? He lived with my stepmother about a mile or so away from us. And I would go in his house. He had guns behind his couch. I'm talking about loaded guns, shotguns, 45s, 38s, 22. This is where I got it. Like, I see these guns and I see everybody was kind of scared of him. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do that too. And so for me, I wasn't seeing a president. I didn't see law enforcement that looked like me. I didn't see firemen who looked like me. What I saw was dope dealers. I saw pimps. I saw hustlers. And I saw guns. I saw people being aggressive. And I said, this is something I want to do in my life. And the drug addicts I saw, I knew that I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be homeless. I didn't want that. I wanted to have the power. And so I took on that lifestyle. And I talk about that in my book, From the Bottom to the Top, right? I talk about my early life, right? Like, I remember one of the first incidents of violence I really can recall seeing was my auntie and my mother, where they had got into an altercation. We had a party. Next thing I know, my auntie stabbed my mama in the back with a knife, right? A long butcher knife, right? Mm-hmm. And as a kid, you coming through the door and you see your mom and your auntie struggling over a big butcher knife, and your mama got a wound in her back here, a wound in her neck from the knife, the same knife, and my auntie bleed from between her legs from being stabbed by my mama between her legs. And I mean, this is violence as a kid, 6 years old. Yeah. And my auntie pulled out a shotgun and pointed at us. I'm thinking she's about to kill me and my mom and my sisters. This is the type of stuff I grew up seeing. And so for me, it was more like, hey, look, man, you're going to do what you got to do to survive in these streets. And I decided to go to selling drugs and playing with guns.
So I want to pause right now and just talk to the viewer. There are two things, if you might have missed it or maybe you didn't miss it. One thing Marlo's talked about is that he said in his heart, and he envisioned himself becoming a drug dealer. He wanted that lifestyle. I want to ask you right now, is there anything that you said in your heart, whether good or bad, that you envisioned and that you spoke out of your mouth, that you manifested in your life right now? I want you to think about that and do some self-reflection and write it down, talk to yourself about it, and see if it's bad, whatever adjustments you can make to your life to turn that bad into good. And if it's good, continue to speak and manifest those things over your life. Another thing I want you guys to reflect on is earlier in the conversation, me and Marlo was talking about foundation. Look at the foundation. Look at the foundation. The foundation was very traumatic. The foundation was that of having a mother that was on drugs, that of having to hold the drug dealer's money in his pockets 5 to 7 days a week, and him saying in his heart that he wants to be like them because they were drawn in the women and the money and the clothes and the lifestyle of basically having the flexibility to be on the corner all day. He said those things in his heart, and guess what happened? It manifested itself. So in retrospect, can you tell the audience when and why you started traveling down that unlawful path?
Most definitely. Yeah, to be quite frank with you, I started young, and like I said, I started seeing other people doing this, and I'm seeing how they was being successful, which I thought was success as a little kid. They eating, they got all the women, got all the cars, all the money. They looked to be doing pretty good to me. And so I told myself I want to try it. I'm going to try that one day, but I didn't. Time passed, a lot of time passed before I finally started to go down that pathway, right? And I think when I finally started, I probably was around like 14.
Oh, wow.
It took some time. I had a lot of struggles, right? I could tell you that, let me share this with you guys for a second. I remember, my mom not being able to pay her bills at the time when we got evicted from house after house after house. One day the sheriff knocked on our door and said, "Hey, y'all got 15 minutes to collect gather your stuff, and y'all got to go." My mom was like, 15 minutes ain't enough time.
Sure.
He said, "Take what you can, 15 minutes." After that, I'm putting a lock on the door. And, so I'm a little kid. I started gathering my little Nintendo. At the time, I had a little Nintendo, get my games, get some of my dirty clothes I had. And next thing I know, 15 minutes was gone.
Yeah.
The sheriff kicked us out on the street, and that was his job. My mama didn't pay our rent for months. And the next thing I know, we living in the Salvation Army right there that was used to be located right off of 8th or 9th Street in West Oakland. We're living in the Salvation Army. And I remember coming back to our house trying to figure out if we could gather some more of our belongings. They had a big dumpster sitting out there, and you had people just throwing all our stuff into the big dumpster. And I'm looking as a kid like, man, that's messed up, man. I was like some of my best stuff. And so for me, it was like, you know what, man, this is not going to happen to me no more.
Right.
So I got into the game. I started with weed. I purchased some weed and started saying, look, I can make some money selling weed. I started at the school. I was trying that and away from school. And I realized at some point that I just wasn't making enough money, right? I didn't have the bag. I didn't have a big enough bag, right? And so I decided to take the little monies that I did make, and I wanted to try to invest in something else, right? And I started thinking, like, what can I do to make me more money? And it hit me, bam. Remember when you were 7 and 8? You was holding that money? Man, get into the crack game. And so right now, I want y'all to understand, it may be something that you keep reflecting back on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That you, every time you get in that crunch, you get out of jail, you get out of prison, you get out of a relationship, as you start to go, and you're like, man, how am I going to get to that next level? You go back to something you did in the past that you felt like was beneficial for you, but it really wasn't, right? And so that's what I did. I went to selling crack. I got me some crack. I started selling it. And at the end of the day, it was profitable. How everything is in the beginning, a lot of times you start doing some negative stuff. Oh, it seemed like it's all good. You winning. Everything seemed to be working out for me. Right. I had all the nice Jordans I wanted. I had all the nice clothes I wanted. I had the money I wanted. What came along with that, I started buying cars, all the nice cars, loud music, rims, all the stuff that we seem to think that is, make you feel good type stuff. But it really wasn't really nothing, right? I look at it now as a grown man. I realized I spent a lot of money on bull crap. I could have been buying properties. Yeah. But it's, buying houses. But instead, and that's when houses were much cheaper back then compared to today's time. Yeah. And I didn't get in the game that way. I was looking for the rings and all this jewelry. And what came along with that was problems, right? And so for the problems, I decided to give me some guns, right? I started getting all kind of guns. I'm talking about, you name it, I probably had it, right? And what would happen? I messed around and got caught up.
Wow. Say you messed around and got caught up. How many times do you think you went to jail, and how much time do you feel like you gave to the criminal justice system?
I've probably been arrested maybe like 6 times, around 6 times. And combined, I probably did about maybe close, about 3.5 years. The longest stretch was about 3 years and like 3 months at one time. Everything else was small time, 2 days, I bail out, maybe a week, stuff like that. Nothing was long into my last time being incarcerated. That was the 3 years and change.
So when you were going through those, maybe staying in for a day or two bailout, a week bailout, maybe even a max a month bailout, was there any thinking involved in that? Like, okay, you're like, this is becoming too consistent. I'm going in and out. I should change my life. I should do something different. Was there a thought or?
Not, really, for me, it was more like I made it from being a kid all up to an adult before I finally got arrested, right? Uh-huh. And so for me, I felt like I was slick, right? I felt like I was doing cool. And I felt like, oh man, if I wouldn't have did this, I would never be here right now. So next time I'm not going to do that. You start trying to reason, the reason why you're going to jail. You try to rationalize your decision making and say, okay, if I didn't do this, this wouldn't happen. So next time I'm not going to do this. I'm all good. And so you come out sometime and you feel like you're a better criminal. And at the end of the day, you're not, right? You still run into the same law enforcement agencies out there. They have helicopters, like I said, they have boats, right? They have people that snitch on you, your so-called friends. You have cameras everywhere. You're really not going to be able to get away with this, whatever you're doing. At some point, it's gonna come down on you. And so, yeah, I got arrested a few times. I'm on one time. I got arrested for embezzlement. Right, I was taken out of a store. Right, I worked there. They entrusted me, and I was taken from them because I felt like they should have been paying me more. Right. And at the end of the day, back then, I wouldn't admit that. But now I'm able to admit that, yeah, you were doing the wrong thing. If you feel like you should be worth more, go to the people and ask for a raise. Yeah. If they want to give you a raise, find another job that'll give you a raise, or create your own business, right? But I put myself out there thinking I would be able to get away with it, and I got caught. And so, yeah, I did think about it from time to time, and I still made the same decision to go try again, a different way, got the same outcome.
So basically, would you say that you, instead of strategizing on how to do things in a legal way, you were strategizing on how to become a better criminal?
Absolutely. You hear people say that too, like, when people go to jail, they're just gonna try to become better criminals. Not all the time, but there are times you have time to reflect. Right. You're sitting there and you're thinking, like, what I do wrong? Man, if I would have never put the bundle, a bag of drugs, over there by Miss Bessie's house, she wouldn't have called the police on me. Right. So that's how I got caught up. So now I ain't gonna put the drugs over by Miss Bessie's house. I'm just gonna put it over here in the tree. Okay. And she's gonna go right back to the same neighborhood, the same police officer, the same bundles, and put in the same backyard, just on a different side. Right. I ain't gonna get caught. Yeah, right. You don't get caught again. Right.
Can you recall the precise point in your life when you were like, you know what? I no longer want to go down this path anymore. I want to change my life and do something differently. Can you recall?
Absolutely, I can. But it's a trip because even though I can recall it and I try to walk that route, I still didn't do it. Right. And so there's somebody out there right now. You always say, I want to do right. It made me think of Paul in the Bible where he said, you want to do right, but for some reason you don't do right. And like, it's a conflict between you and the spirit, right? I wanted to do right. I seen it. And I tell you one time I got caught up in a situation where, and I'm so blessed and happy, nobody got shot, nobody got killed, nobody got injured in this. But I got caught up in a gunfight, right? I had 2 guns on me at the time, and I'm shooting, bop, 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 and somebody else shooting, right? I ran out of bullets. Somehow I'm in their area, so they loading up and they still shooting, so I had to get up out of there. I got up out of there, I got in my car, got on the freeway, I'm driving back to safety, and I'm thinking to myself, I need some more bullets. I ran out, right? 2 guns, fully loaded clips. I'm making phone calls. I don't want to go back to my house to get bullets. I'm trying to see if I could get a shorter distance and call somebody ahead of time and see if they can give me some bullets somewhere else. And nobody would pick up the phone. Thank God. Right. People I know that's ready to go do whatever, they didn't answer. And so I finally got to safety, and I was thinking to myself, like, bro, why are you doing this? Man, you could have hurt somebody out there. You don't even know if you hurt somebody out there. You got to stop. But needless to say, I'm still thinking, like, I gotta get this money. I got to do this. I got to do that. And so I wanted to change right then, but I didn't. I ended up getting caught up right after that with guns and dope on me. Went to jail. And I was thinking, like, man, you got to stop. What are you doing? And I'm still out on the streets. My mindset, I'm still thinking, like, I'm going to get back out here and get this money, right? If I have to get pistols to get my money, I'm going to get it. One day I was on my way to court. I was handcuffed, shackled hand to foot in the sheriff vehicle. And I'm going into the courtroom, right? I was actually going to Alameda Court. I got caught up out there with the dope and guns. And so they're getting us out of the van, and I'm in a parking lot right next to the courthouse. And when they're taking us out of this van, I look across the parking lot, maybe I would say like 30 yards, maybe 40 yards away from me. I see my mama van pull up. And I see my mama get out the van. At the time, my mama her leg is amputated, half one of her legs. I see her get out with her prosthetic leg. I see my sister. My sister has a disability. I love her to death. She got her glasses on. She helped my mama out, and she get the wheelchair out. And I'm sitting there looking at this situation take place. My mama get in the wheelchair. She look at me.